Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show coming your way live from Reno, Nevada. Finally, coming your way live from Reno, Nevada. More on that coming up momentarily. Ray Dominguez back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300, or both of those stations have streaming apps that you can download. They are free to download and free to use. And they're both sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. I want to talk about this Sweden-Italy game that is going on right now in the prelim round of the Olympics. Finland already lost today, so one Av and Arturi Lehkonen and another former Av and Mikko Rantanen lost. I'll talk about that in a second. I want to regale you with the tales of Ryan Kaufman's travel. I hope Ray appreciates this, if nobody else. So yesterday I'm supposed to fly here to Reno, and I thought, I was a little late in the game getting my flight booked. So obviously the rates went up quite a bit. So I thought, I'd be a good company man to Learfield. I'd save them a few bucks and take a connection, right? Just take a connection out of Phoenix. No big deal. I got plenty of time. I'm in no rush to get here to Reno. I don't normally do that, but I've just felt like I should, and now I regret it deeply. So I had plenty of time for my connection. I planned it out. I'll get to Phoenix easily in time, hang out in Phoenix for a little bit, and then hit my connection. Well, there was like a flap on the engine that wouldn't open. And initially they told us, well, we'll just get somebody to manually open it. Like, first of all, I thought I appreciated the candor of the flight crew. I don't. Don't tell me. They're like, we can't get a flap open on our engine. And then goes into great detail on what this does. And then he's like, oh, it doesn't sound as bad. It's not as bad as it sounds. Okay, well, anytime you're talking about a billion-dollar piece of machinery not working, it's a big deal. But anyway, so we'll get somebody open in. We'll be delayed a little bit. Next announcement, plane has been decommissioned. Everybody out. This becomes problematic because now I'm not going to make my connection, because by the time they got a new plane, I wouldn't have arrived in Phoenix in time to make my connection. So still go to Phoenix. The folks at the airline of record, I don't know if I want to put them on blast, because they were very nice about the whole thing, but it's a real pain. So they put me, give me, and if you've ever had this happen to you, you know that they get their night, they give you a hotel and everything to stay the night. And I'm taking the first flight out this morning. But I get on the shuttle to go to the airport, and I'm on the shuttle with the flight crew from my flight, who they're based in Philly, and now they can't get home because by the time we got to Phoenix, that was it for most of the flights that day. So we're riding on the shuttle, and they're talking about, well, what are we going to do? We're in Phoenix for the night. And I had the idea, when I knew all this was going down, as I tend to do, I checked out the local sports schedule, saw that Cooper Flagg was in town. So I said, well, I'm going to go to the Suns game if you guys want to go. So ended up going with the flight attendants from my flight to the Phoenix Suns game. Kind of an impromptu evening out, but it actually turned out to be a fairly nice evening. One thing I forgot though is live, we live in a place where right now the sports are great. Right now, the Broncos have come back. The Nuggets and the Avalanche are championship contenders, but there's a downside to that. That tickets to sporting events are both somewhat limited if you want to get a decent seat, and I'm not, going to sit in the nosebleeds because it would just be better to watch it from my hotel room or something in that case. So the tickets are not in abundant supply, as you know, if you want to go to the Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, whatever it might be. They're also very expensive. And I don't think in a vacuum they're that expensive. Like I take the boys and stuff like that, but compared to other places, I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking how much cheaper tickets to any number of NBA teams games are compared to the Denver Nuggets. Which I suppose is a good thing, because the last thing I want to do on a trip that's supposed to make me money is, spend all of it going to a Phoenix Suns Dallas Mavericks game, which was as good as I expected it to be, if I'm being honest. In that it was not a good basketball game. So go to that. This morning, get up, still dark outside. I am not an early riser. So it took every fiber of my being to get to the airport, which I was told is going to be super busy all the time, right? Phoenix's airport, super busy all the time. So I worked to get to the airport, walk right in to Ghost Town. Oh, well, get work done, get on the flight. A light bulb was out. I don't know where the light bulb was out, but there's a light bulb out, and apparently it takes 45 minutes to change a light bulb. I think that's the punchline to a joke. So, short story long, here I am in Reno, Air Force women's basketball tonight, taking on Nevada, looking for the season sweep and 4 straight wins. Ray, I got a souvenir cup from the Suns game if you want it. Just a little thank you for everything you do. A souvenir cup from the Phoenix Suns game. I'm sure you'll cherish it forever. So there's my little travel story for the trip. And I haven't had any difficulties or really anything like that this season. It's just the one time I say, you know what? I can take a connection. No big deal. I'm in no rush. And then everything goes the way it did. So, moral to the story, Ryan Kaufman is only flying direct for the rest of this Air Force women's basketball season. So, oh no. I just looked up at my television screen. So I've been watching this Sweden-Italy game. And it is remarkable what Italy has been doing. There was, at one point, Sweden was out shooting them. Every one shot Italy got, Sweden got 8. It was like 33-4, the shots. And the score was tied 2-2 in the second period. It goes beyond, I tweeted this out, it goes beyond just getting goalied. Like 33-4. And it's, the goaltender for Sweden, Gustafsson, the Minnesota Wild goalie, he gives up 2 goals on 4 shots. So they're getting goalied by the Italy guy. Sweden's goaltender has been abysmal. And that tells more of the story on why the score was tied despite the vast disparity in shots. And now I'm looking at it. Sweden's up 3-2 with a little under 14 minutes left in the third period, and Italy's goalie just got hurt. So the guy who had stopped 46 shots to this point, and think about that. He's faced 49 shots, and there was still 13 and a half minutes to go in the third period, and he just got hurt. Oh man, this was shaping up to be an early big story in Olympic hockey. If Italy were to pull off what would it be, a massive upset over Sweden, and now Sweden's just absolutely peppering the backup goalie. They're up to 52 shots. Again, the Fighting Gabriel Landeskog's lead at 3-2. And therein lies a really cool moment in the comeback of Gabriel Landeskog, because as the Avalanche go, his comeback is, I guess it's not complete until he wins another Stanley Cup, because that's ultimately what he came back for. But until the NHL playoffs, it's like, okay, he came back, he's been playing, he's been hurt lately, but he'll be back after the Olympic break. So for us, when it comes to the Avalanche, we're kind of waiting for the next step in that comeback. Well, here's another step that you may have forgotten about, which is him having the chance to come back from this injury that has kept him out for multiple years to be able to represent his country in the Olympics. And he ends up scoring what was at the time the game-tying goal that made it 1-1 in the first period. So just as if the comeback story of Gabriel Landeskog was not awesome enough, as Sweden rings one off the post. Oh, they're going to get another goal here. It's a matter of time. They have, as hard as this is to say, given the amount of shots they already have generated, they've picked up the pace with Italy's backup goaltender in there. But awesome moment from Gabriel Landeskog. And depending on how this goes, if Italy comes back and wins, it's going to be even more wide open. But I'm looking at this Olympic hockey tournament, and the race for bronze feels pretty wide open. I would have said this morning that Finland was the odds-on favorite. They are the reigning Olympic champions, although NHLers weren't playing in those Olympics. You have Mikko Rantanen, you have Arturi Lehkonen, just Heiskanen, like the list goes on. Finland's really good. I would said the bronze behind Canada and the U.S. would be theirs, but they lose today to Slovakia, led by the Montreal Canadiens' recent top overall draft pick, Slatkovsky, who had, because he wasn't in the NHL at the time, a huge Olympics last time around. So now the race for bronze, and I still think it's a race for bronze. I mean, anything could happen. I'm looking at a game that I certainly didn't expect to be a dogfight midway through the third period. But it does seem like it's the winner of the U.S.-Canada will get the gold, loser gets silver, and then the bronze is kind of open. Might be even more wide open here with the early results. And Canada and the U.S. haven't even played yet. They both play tomorrow. So keep an eye here as Italy, with the flurry of their own. I love Olympic hockey. So good. And with the NHLers being back, makes it even better. As far as the U.S. and Canada goes, I'm curious to see how Canada actually comes out tomorrow. They play who they play tomorrow, Czechia. So they play Marty Necas tomorrow at 8:40 Mountain Time. So John Cooper has done something really interesting with the lines. He split up Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby. He split up those BFFs. And he has McKinnon on the third line with Brendan Hagel and Sam Reinhart. And just for a moment, take that in. Nathan McKinnon, third line center. So if he, and I wonder if there's some gamesmanship going on, because Canada yesterday closed practice and John Cooper claimed it was because there wasn't enough room for the media. I wonder if the public lines that are being thrown out there are not going to be the lines when things pick up and really matter. I would imagine there's going to be some experimenting going on with Canada a little bit, but tomorrow's going to be an interesting one because Czechia is a good team. So I wonder if Canada is going to keep that with Nathan McKinnon on the third line. But therein lies what's going to be the difference here in these Olympics when it comes to Canada and the U.S. Because even though the U.S. is an all-star team in their own right, it's not like they don't have Nathan McKinnon as their third line center. So this becomes like the Four Nations, even more so than the Four Nations, about goaltending. Okay, Jordan Binnington, who is brilliant in the Four Nations, has been objectively awful for the St. Louis Blues this year. He's been terrible. And it seems like he's going to be the number one goalie because of what he did in the Four Nations. If Binnington can hold up, I think you have to favor Canada. But if Binnington is anywhere close to what he's been during the NHL season, even with Connor Hellebuck, Team USA's goalie, not being at his best this year, you have to say, I think the U.S. can beat Canada. But I think the depth and the overall skill of Canada with the liability that Jordan Binnington could be in goal versus maybe pound for pound not as good of a team as Canada, but more well-rounded because they have a goalie that you believe in more in Connor Hellebuck than you do Jordan Binnington. So we'll gauge. The U.S. has a super easy group. They're going to roll. So I don't know how much stock you want to put into what U.S. does against Latvia tomorrow at just after 1 o'clock Mountain Time. But yeah, we'll see how Canada lines up if they really have Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon split up, and how the U.S. looks. And here's the other part. I want to see how Canada's power play does with Nathan McKinnon and Makar. Just as an experiment, just to see, because the Avs power play has been so dreadful. And if McKinnon and Makar are on the power play for Canada and it works, that's going to confuse me even more. So Canada tomorrow morning and the U.S. in the afternoon, as they seem inevitably headed for a collision course for the gold medal. Same can be said for the U.S. Women and Canadian women. We got a little preview of that. The U.S. blowing out Canada 5-0 yesterday. Now, Canada didn't have Marie-Philippe Poulin, who is their best player, but does she account for 5 or 6 goals by herself? So just a win for the U.S. You go, oh, okay, well, we'll see when Poulin is playing, which she should be good to go for the gold medal game. I think this is precautionary that they're holding her out. But the U.S. beat Canada 5-0. I think it's the first time that Canada has been shut out in the Olympics. And the U.S. has outscored their opponents 20-1 so far in these Olympics. So the U.S. women look like a wagon. We'll see what the men look like tomorrow against Latvia. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Wednesday edition of the show from Reno. Coming up next, what do I want to get into here? Oh, there was an interesting little discussion going on social media in the wake of the Super Bowl when it comes to the Seattle defense that I think a lot of Broncos fans are feeling that their team is a bit disrespected. I will get into that next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Sweden gets another one on the board. So they have a 2-goal lead midway through the third period against Italy. But regardless of how this all goes down, what a fight by Italy, and the fact that their goaltender, who is phenomenal, got hurt may lead to that scoreline being a little bit skewed. But 4-2 Sweden in the third period. Again, Canada plays the Fighting Marty Natchez tomorrow in the morning, just like 8:40, I think I said. And then the U.S. men take on Latvia just after 1 o'clock Mountain Time tomorrow. So I saw this, and I get it, and I guess credit to BetMGM because they got a reaction out of me. And these betting sites are very good about doing this, and I almost wonder if they, put something out there that they kind of feel like people will look crossways at. But I saw a graphic. I don't know if you saw this as well. I tweeted about it yesterday from my delayed plane. So BetMGM ranked the best championship defenses since the year 2000. So 85 Bears does not pertain. So anything before the year 2000. They had the 01 Ravens, and they put in this Super Bowl year. I look at that team as the 2000 Ravens that won the Super Bowl in 01. But Lewis Reed, that whole outfit, Siragusa, right? Siragusa was on that team. Then the 03 Bucks, team that Gruden won with. That was Dungy's team. This year's Seahawks as the third best championship defense since the year 2000. Okay? Put a pin in that for a moment. Then it was the 2014 Seahawks who beat the Broncos in Super Bowl 48, followed by the Broncos championship defense of Super Bowl 50, 2015 Broncos that won the Super Bowl in 2016. So I don't know if BetMGM is being a prisoner of the moment, or they're putting Seattle's defense this year as high as they could without even looking at themselves and saying this is ridiculous. But they still have them too high. Okay. And I'll start not even with the Broncos side of it. I don't even think, and we're talking about great defenses. These are all elite defenses. But Seattle's defense this year is not as good as the Legion of Boom that won the Super Bowl, when in Super Bowl 48. That defense shut down Drew Brees. Drew Brees threw one touchdown in the playoff matchup against that Seattle team. They then beat San Francisco, if you remember the back and forth between Richard Sherman and Michael Crabtree. Kaepernick was still the quarterback of that team. They had just gone to a Super Bowl. And then they beat the best offense we have ever seen in the history of football. And that's not hyperbole. The numbers say that Denver Broncos offense was the best ever, led by an MVP in Peyton Manning. And they shut them down. I mean, we always, in Colorado, we think of the ball went over Peyton Manning's head, and then who knows what happened after that, right? But what happened after that was that the Legion of Boom and that Seattle defense dominated Denver for the rest of the game. So I wouldn't even take this year's Seahawks defense over that Seahawks defense. But as for the Broncos of it all, they went through Brady, and the 15-1 Carolina Panthers led by another MVP in Cam Newton. And the most indelible image of that Super Bowl, well, heck, even if the AFC Championship, is the pressure that DeMarcus Ware, Malik Jackson, Shaquille Barrett, Von Miller generated against Brady. They bludgeoned Tom Brady in the AFC Championship. And then the image that will forever be seared in our brains from the Super Bowl is the strip sack on Cam Newton. And although Russell Wilson did put up big numbers in Super Bowl 48, but that Broncos defense was also carrying a greatly diminished Peyton Manning. Right? They won that Super Bowl because of their defense. I would say both Seahawks teams had more help offensively than that Denver defense did. But as I look at it, that Ravens defense, I'll keep at number one. That was a team, and I don't know if they're just talking about the Super Bowl or what they're talking about, but I'm going to take the entire season into account. They gave up 10 points a game. They gave up one offensive touchdown in the playoffs. And from a talent perspective, easily one of the most talented defenses of all time. So that Ravens team, and I know in the Super Bowl they didn't exactly play a juggernaut. But that Ravens defense was so, I mean, if you think back to the regular season too, that Ravens defense was outstanding. I think I was ready to go Broncos at 2. But I actually think that Seahawks team that won Super Bowl 48 was beginning to end a slightly better defense. And I think, again, the fact that they shut down the best offense in the history of football, the reigning NFC champions, and one of the most prolific passing quarterbacks of all time in Drew Brees. I think that's what puts it over the top. They're so, and I know the Broncos more pass rush, but they had the no-fly zone. I would say the path through the postseason for Seattle, as good as it was for Denver, just edges out the Denver Broncos. Only just. And then I go Broncos 3. I go the Bucks team 4. And then I would go this year's Seattle defense. Because this year's Seattle defense, they were great. But I don't think that they're better than a previous Seahawks championship defense, and I don't think that they stack up better than some of these other defenses. But I'd be curious your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Since 2000, best defenses. I say Ravens, 2014 Seahawks, Broncos, Bucks, and then this year's Seahawks defense. I don't want to be too beholden to the offense that they played in the Super Bowl, and I'm trying to look at it at the bigger picture. Seattle was in a very good division with two of the most brilliant offensive minds in football, and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. Beat them. They were in the superior conference. And yeah, maybe it was a flawed New England team because of the inexperience but they were good, just not better than some of these other teams. 719-247-1313. We'll get into your text messages coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Keep me in your thoughts tomorrow as I try to make my way back to Colorado here from Reno after what has gone on the last 24 hours. Again, it turned out okay. Um, they're just tuning in mechanical issues with my plane going out and got stuck in Phoenix, but went with the um, flight attendants from my flight because they were stranded too. We went to the Suns game, so was able to save the day, but or the evening, I should say. But I would have rather just got Reno and um, Scott in Florissant, Texan, as someone that's flown over 2 million miles. I love a good travel story. Um, yeah, you must have some, Scott. Maybe that's what we should do. Because, like, I'm such a delicate human being that that's about as traumatic as it's been for me traveling. Like, that I had to stay in Phoenix. I ended up going to a Suns game. Like, that is the worst travel story that I have. So I understand I'm being quite delicate about the whole thing. Scott, you probably have some horror stories, but it all turned out okay in the end. Um, Scott continues, curious to saw the Beanpot on Monday night turned into a blowout, but was amazed by how many players were already drafted into the NHL. And then adds, maybe my luck will change on the blackjack tables. Did not see the Beanpot, but that's what you're seeing. And I was talking with Frank Serratori about this last week when I was guest hosting his show. College hockey has become, I don't want to say it is a much more viable path to the NHL than it ever has been. And now you have NIL and you have all this other stuff that's going to attract more talent. And some of those Canadians now from the CHL, do get to play college hockey. So I think it's all of those things together that you're seeing. And I see it. In Atlantic hockey, it's not so much as, maybe what CC deals with in the NCHC. But I see in Atlantic hockey, like I'm doing the Air Force Mercyhurst game on Friday on Altitude. And these rosters got 2 or 3. And Atlantic hockey is not the Big Ten, not the NCHC, and they have NHLers. So the amount of talent that is now going through college hockey is more than it ever has been. And there's also, and it's not just NIL and the rules relaxing and everything to allow these athletes to come in. It's also the quality of these programs. 2 of them playing in the Beanpot, obviously, for a long time, have been 2 of the preeminent programs in college hockey. But even you have to look, locally as just a microcosm of what's going on. Look at Colorado College and what Chris Mayotte has going on. I know, tough weekend against DU, but remember where that program was not that long ago? Like, there are a lot of good, young, up-and-coming coaches that are taking over these programs, and they're selling their programs to the top young talent in the country. So college hockey is better than it ever has been, and leading to great games. As to your last point, Scott, I don't know that I will be hitting the blackjack tables because I feel like I should not press my luck after the weekend, the day that I had. Tom, on the BetMGM ranked the best championship defenses since the year 2000. So no 85 Bears, which would be the obvious one that we would bring into this conversation. And I thought that they got it after the Ravens. I think they jumbled it up. I would go Ravens, then the Seattle team that beat Denver, then the Denver team that beat Carolina. Then I would go the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then this year's Seattle team, and they didn't have any of those four teams in that order. Tom throws one out. The '08 Steelers defense, Ray, feel free to chime in here. I would put in the conversation of best defenses since 2000, led the league in almost every defensive category. No argument from you, Ray, I'm guessing on that? Okay. So and the '08 Steelers defense, '09, and I remember that team vividly because I was at the hospital waiting for my oldest son to be born, watching that Super Bowl. They and kind of where I gave the Broncos a lot of credit, and why they deserve to be higher was because of how much they needed to be great to compensate for what was going on the other side of the football. Would you say that that '08 Steelers defense with Ben Roethlisberger, young Ben Roethlisberger, would have been would have definitely been one of the, or am I getting those wrong? Was '08 the Cardinals one? So I'm not, no, that was when they had better Roethlisberger. I'm thinking of the Seattle one, which was before. That was when they went up against Hasselbeck. 2010 didn't win a championship. Okay. See, you got me all confused. Yeah, the '08 Steelers defense. Yeah, and no, Roethlisberger was, I mean, the defense was great. Tom is exactly right, but the teams like Baltimore had Trent Dilfer, um, Buccaneers had Brad Johnson, the Broncos had um, washed Peyton Manning, so those still rank a little bit higher, but certainly one of that deserves to be mentioned. The complete list was so they had the Ravens, Bucks, this year's Seahawks, this Legion Boom Seahawks, the Broncos, the '08 Steelers just missed the top five, the team that Tom's referring to. So they were very much in there. And then the 2011 Packers and the 2025 Eagles, which would be the 2010 Packers for most people and the 2024 Eagles. I don't recall what that Eagles defense did. Who did they play in the Super Bowl? I don't remember that. I don't. I'm last year's Super Bowl. I don't remember who they played in that and how it went and how I felt about the whole thing. It was the Chiefs, Ray. They played the Chiefs and destroyed them. So that's what that one was. Couple of other texts yesterday because of me traveling and everything. We ran Monday's show, and I like when maybe you don't get to tune in Monday, but you tune in Tuesday and we still have some of the leftover conversations. Well, this was the exact conversation we had on Monday because it was Monday's show. Tucker said this. My assertion was that we can appreciate what the Seattle defense did and recognize their greatness. In fact, I just said they're one of the five best championship defenses since the year 2000, while still saying that wasn't a great Super Bowl. It wasn't a compelling Super Bowl because in part because we are more often than not programmed to equate offense with entertainment, offense with watchability, offense with great Super Bowls. Tucker disagrees, says good defense is great. Folks your age just don't understand great defenses. You just want to see points. I understand your thoughts. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it is. And then this coming in, I talked about how this All-Star weekend, which I'm hanging on. I'm still looking forward to it. But as every day goes on, I feel like I'm starting to go the other way, and maybe this will not be the All-Star game to save all All-Star games. But I do think Jamal Murray has a chance to be the star of the weekend. Right? He said that he's going there and he's going to play hard, which is more than half the battle when it comes to that nonsense that goes on. He's competing in the three-point contest. He's a first-time All-Star, so there's going to be some added attention on him. And if he can get Jokic to take it seriously, Jokic Murray two-man game for Team World, I think Jamal Murray might end up being the star of the weekend. And Texter from the 719 brings up a great point when it comes to Jamal Murray and what this season has been. You know, wasn't that long ago when we all questioned Jamal Murray about his grit and stepping up, and he just could never get there. And we kind of dogged him out for a while now. All of a sudden, he's the second coming of Christ. How's that happen? Well, I think that's a little hyperbolic. I don't think anybody said that. I'm glad he's there and he's proved us all wrong, but there was a time where we were ready to give him the boot. You're absolutely right. I contemplated openly on this show trades for Jamal Murray. Lamented the Nuggets signing him to that contract, and I repeatedly called him out for exactly what you're describing. But that's a credit to Jamal Murray. And a lot of it has to do with health. He's healthy, but he stayed healthy, and he's putting up an all-star caliber season. He wasn't an all-star before this. Everything you said is true, and it holds true. Jamal Murray has taken it upon himself to finally get to the place that we all thought he could get to, and he deserves some credit for that just as much as he deserved the criticism for the previous few years. More Drive Time Sports after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour two on this Wednesday. Ryan Kaufman with you in Reno because tonight Air Force women's basketball looks for their fourth consecutive win and the series sweep of the Nevada Wolfpack tonight. 7:30 tip-off here on one of the two stations you may be listening on. It's on Extra Sports 1300. The Air Force men's basketball coaches show will be on KVOR this evening. So Air Force hoops galore on these two radio stations. 719 24/7 1313 is the number if you want to jump aboard. I got this text in somewhat unsolicited, but it actually leads perfectly into what I want to discuss. This is from Eric. He says, the Giants are going to win the 2027 Super Bowl. And I think I like the Giants a lot this upcoming season. I'll just say it. They're going to be a team that I will be looking at because you look so many questions with Washington. Right? Jaden Daniels' health. They replaced Cliff Kingsbury. You know that during as great as Jaden Daniels was, that roster had some serious flaws in it. And this offseason will be very important for Washington, I think, to build a more complete team around Jaden Daniels. Philly, we'll see what happens with their latest coordinator hire, Sean Mannion. But that's a roller coaster ride. And then is A.J. Brown going to be around next year for them? And then Dallas, we'll see what they continue to make of the Micah Parsons trade. But I think there's a moment right now where the division is kind of trending in a wrong direction, but the Giants are trending up. Getting John Harbaugh. I like Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, if he comes back healthy, the defensive front that they have, the pass rushers they have, and I think this is where the text comes in. How good can that Giants defense be next year? Got to work on the back end a little bit in the draft and free agency, but that pass rush of the Giants already one of the best in the NFL. I really like the Giants. I don't know if I'd say Super Bowl, but I like the Giants a lot. And look, a team that I thought had the best chance to make the biggest jump in their win total from the previous year to this year was New England. I liked New England a lot, but I didn't think they could win a Super Bowl. So maybe it's the same thing here, or go to a Super Bowl, let alone. So maybe that's where history repeats itself. I really like the Giants, and I think I will take them to at least be a playoff team, be one of the more improved teams in the league, and maybe they follow the same route that the Patriots did and even exceeding my expectations, which were pretty high to begin with. But it leads perfectly into what the rest of this week is about for everyone, or even New England. Really, they want to look forward to next year. Everybody other than Seattle is looking forward to next year. And that also means betting odds are out. And we like looking at these. And one set of futures bets that caught my eye, maybe they did yours as well, the AFC West odds. Ray, would you like to guess who is favored to win the AFC West next year? Take that as a no. I think Ray's gone. Would you like to take a guess on who's favored to win the AFC West next year? Did you know that, or are you guessing? Okay. Mix. Yes, it is. It is the LA Chargers who are the betting favorite right now, plus 170 to win the AFC West. Chiefs are right behind them at plus 175, and Denver is going off anywhere between 210 and 215 to win the division. So these are obviously to win the division. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the predicted order of finish. This is just how they are seen in terms of winning their division. And I mean, it's notable for two reasons. Notable because the Broncos are the reigning division champions and not getting that love. And notable because if I told you it wasn't Denver who is favored to win the AFC West, you'd probably say Kansas City. And maybe Kansas City would have been your first guess anyway, not Ray's first guess. He nailed it on the first try. But I think a lot of people would expect the odds makers to favor Kansas City. But I actually don't think that these are way off, even with the Chargers being the favorites. Okay, they were a playoff team this year. This has nothing to do with their viability as Super Bowl contenders. That is a completely different conversation. This is just winning the division. Okay, so they finished second in the division. They didn't have Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt for almost the entire season. Justin Herbert, and that wasn't, those weren't the only injuries to the offensive line the Chargers had, but they were without their two tackles who happen to be two of the probably four best offensive tackles in the league when they're healthy. They didn't have those. And yet they still finished second in the division. And it's part of the reason why Sam Monson and Pro Football Focus voted Justin Herbert for MVP, because of what he and the Chargers were still able to do despite the rash of injuries they sustained. Now, their defense is really good. It's aging. Khalil Mack's not getting any younger. So the Chargers have some business to attend to. Keenan Allen, they have some aging staples of their team. But I don't think it's crazy to look at right now, going into the offseason, to make the Chargers the betting favorite. And you say, well, why not the Broncos? Because the Broncos, as I have discussed on this program previously, are going to be the prime regression candidate. As much as I say that the Giants are my team to add the most wins to their total from the previous year, the Broncos are going to be many people's team that's going to drop. Now, this doesn't mean they're not going to be a playoff team or not going to be any good, but they're going to be the team that people look at and say, okay, they're not going to have the number of wins that they had last year. And there's two reasons for it. One, the one-score game thing will make them a prime regression candidate, but also they have a first-place schedule now. Here are some of the games that Denver has on their schedule next year. At New England, home against Buffalo, home against the defending Super Bowl champions, in San Francisco, and then they have two division games, one at Arrowhead and one at SoFi. Right there, you could see maybe those being 6 losses for the Denver Broncos. And I'm not saying every single one of them will be, but those are 6 games right there that are not at all crazy to think that the Broncos could lose every single one of those. That already drops them to now we're talking what? 11 wins? So already they're down. And then, what else? I mean, so much is going to change, right? And we know that almost every team drops one game that none of us are expecting them to. Almost every team wins one game we're not expecting them to. So maybe it's one of those 6. But on paper, this is a much more difficult schedule. And I'm not, going down the road of schedule merchants and all of that kind of stuff. They had quality wins. They beat Philadelphia when we thought they were all very good. They beat a flawed Kansas City team, but just as everyone was buying back into Kansas City. But this schedule shapes up to be much more difficult. And teams, by the way, that are all highly motivated. Kansas City's highly motivated to bounce back. San Francisco's excited to be healthier than they were this year. Seattle will see coming off of a Super Bowl win if they have that desire. Buffalo, obviously, going to be hungry to come back. And then New England as well after the showing they had in Santa Clara. So, I mean, right now, if the only thing we can take into account is that what these teams have locked up under contract healthy, I think you have to look at the Chargers as the favorites in the AFC West. I don't disagree with that. Kansas City has serious work to do. And with the Broncos, it's not so much that they have this long to-do list when it comes to the draft and free agency. They have a few things, but it's just the way they won this year and what comes along with a season as successful as the Broncos had. You add all of that up, and I think that the Chargers being the favorite in the AFC West, I have no problem with that. Now, it may change after the draft and free agency. In fact, I would almost bet that it would. Pun. To wit, Ray pointed something out to me on social media today. So we're all looking at, what are the Broncos going to add? They need this, they need that, they need this. Well, what are they going to lose from this year's team? And a lot of people are getting really nervous about an Instagram post from Courtland Sutton today, where he said, chapter closed. And people are thinking, oh, Courtland Sutton knows he's gone. First of all, the writing would have had to been on the wall for weeks now for Courtland Sutton to have that kind of insight, because I don't think the Broncos are even done assessing their roster, let alone having meetings with players. I think this is about the season being over, but we'll see about that. I'll certainly say I'm not a proponent of the Broncos getting rid of Courtland Sutton. I don't think there's any need to get rid of Courtland Sutton. The way I look at it is I think Courtland Sutton has his flaws as a number one receiver for a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl. But he's still a very good situational receiver, red zone, third down. This season, he's been very good. I look at it and say, what can you add around him? Keep Courtland Sutton, but maybe upgrade other weapons around him so maybe he doesn't have to be more than that go-to situational type of wide receiver. But I don't read that caption and say that Cortland Sutton's gone. I don't think the timing makes sense for that it to be that kind of a post, and I don't know why now that the Broncos are finally out from under Russell Wilson's contract that they'll be looking to pinch pennies to get rid of a guy who has been again, he has his limitations as a player, but part of the reason why Sean Payton likes him so much, he has no ego. People are throwing out like getting AJ Brown. I know Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, but I mean, at what point with AJ Brown do you just label him as a malcontent? Or better yet, at what point does Sean Payton label him that way? Cortland Sutton is a good receiver who is very good in those important situations that every team values the most, third down, red zone. And he's low maintenance. He's just a great teammate, company guy, great in the community. I don't understand it. Now, when they were pinching pennies with the Russell Wilson dead cap, then okay. Maybe he was on the block. Not now. Add around him, upgrade around him. To wit, some names starting to emerge as potential targets, not necessarily because of any reporting, but just some people have taken to social media to say that they're out. And there are also free agents that people are starting to look at. We'll get into that next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. So, what do the Broncos need to take the next step next year? Cortland Sutton posting on his Instagram chapter closed with highlights of the past season. So, I don't think you need to read into that. But as my colleague Ray Dominguez just said to me, which is something I said to him earlier today, everything is everything on social media. And Justin Jefferson, by the way, today deactivated his Instagram account. So is that something? We have to look into this. I do look, the social media thing, I know with younger people, they put a lot into, well, we all put a lot into social media, meaning on social media what we post. I don't think scrubbing, remember Kyler Murray scrubbed his Instagram account? And he's not the first athlete to do this. Scrubbed it of all his Cardinals stuff, and the guy's still on that team. The Cardinals wish they could scrub their roster of Kyler Murray. But I do think, like, it's not the social media thing. I do think in an ideal world, Justin Jefferson would get traded. Not for the rest of the NFL, but for him. I listened to him during Super Bowl week. He was making the rounds. He doesn't want to ask. And look, it would be contending for the all-time fastest asking out, considering the Vikings were one of the best teams in the NFL just 1 year ago. Now, I know that they bungled this with Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy, and it got their GM fired, but they were one of the best teams in the league last season or 2 seasons ago, however you want to put it. But I think, well, I'll say this. I don't think he wants to be traded. I think he wants a different quarterback. I don't think he wants JJ McCarthy throwing him the football. Maybe he doesn't want out of Minnesota. He would just like Minnesota to bring in somebody, maybe like a Malik Willis, to try and recreate what they had with Sam Darnold. You know, would have been good for that, keeping Sam Darnold. But some names are floating around. One guy who is not being cryptic whatsoever, David Njoku, said he's done in Cleveland. And remember that he was a big target of ours on behalf of the Denver Broncos coming up on the trade deadline, because it looked like the Browns were having a fire sale. I think Evan Ingram didn't work out quite the way that the Broncos would have liked. Now, I don't look at his numbers as being the be-all, end-all, because Sean Payton uses the Joker to create matchups elsewhere on the field, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Evan Ingram is getting the ball. But I think by all accounts, even when you factor that in, Evan Ingram was not as effective as the Broncos were hoping he would be. So that would be getting David Njoku would be the type of move that I think that the Broncos need to make throughout their roster. Okay, maybe, and I know a lot of people are disappointed at Ingram, but I think that the Broncos can get by another year with Evan Ingram. But this is where is good enough not good enough. There are some positions on the Denver Broncos where you can live with it. Obviously, you know, Evan Ingram's got a big, not a Russell Wilson sized dead cap number, but it's going to hurt a little bit financially to cut him. So in some way, the Broncos may be saying, you know what, let's just keep him around, try to improve upon it. But if a David Njoku comes along, that's where you say good enough is not good enough. Right? And I would say that for all the skill positions. There are aspects of the skill positions. You like J.K. Dobbins before he got hurt, but he's always hurt. You liked R.J. Harvey, but by the end of the year, by the end of the AFC Championship, did you like R.J. Harvey as much? We just got done talking about Courtland Sutton. You like Courtland Sutton, but can you do better? So to me, David Njoku would be an upgrade over Evan Ingram and would be a case where the Denver Broncos say there's some reason to keep this guy, but here comes along a better guy for that position. Let's add him. And would still fit some of the Joker traits, I think, that Sean Payton has discussed. But the spot I keep looking at and will continue to is running back. That's where good enough is not good enough. You're going to seriously go into another year playing this game with J.K. Dobbins' health. And what happens if, like the other, 4 years, that J.K. Dobbins gets hurt again right before the playoffs? With the crop of running backs that are set to become free agents, they all won't. But maybe if one gets through, the Broncos should do everything they can to get him. Case in point, I don't know if you were watching the Super Bowl through the lens of, comparing Seattle to Denver, and we talked about this on Monday. How different would the Super Bowl have been had the Broncos gotten there? But I was in those moments where I was looking at that game through the lens of what I do on a daily basis, which is talk about the Denver Broncos. I said, you know what the Denver Broncos need? A Kenneth Walker type. That's what they need. And there just so happens to be a Kenneth Walker type that is set to become a free agent. And his name is Kenneth Walker. Now, a drunken John Schneider today at the Seattle parade said that Kenneth Walker was already negotiating with him, like trying to negotiate. Like John Schneider was just trying to enjoy the fact that he has built up 2 Super Bowl championship teams. And that's a big story out of Sunday. John Schneider built up the team with Russell Wilson. Then he traded Russell Wilson, used the draft capital from Denver to build up his next championship roster. It's about as good of a job in that window as we have seen a general manager do, to basically not tear it down because some guys aged out, the Legion of Boom retired, all that, or moved on, aged out a little bit. But for John Schneider to build up that team, then that team goes away and builds up a whole new team. That's maybe the biggest story out of Sunday, is the job that John Schneider did. But anyway, he was drunk and said that Kenneth Walker he's just trying to enjoy his time, and Kenneth Walker's trying to hammer out contract details. So doesn't seem like Kenneth Walker is going to hit the market. They do have Charbonnet, who did not play in the Super Bowl, but they like him. I look at Walker, Breece Hall, and Travis Etienne and say maybe only one of those guys are going to be available. But if one of them does, the Broncos need to grab that guy. This isn't a great running back draft class. Julian Love of Notre Dame is not going to be around anywhere close to pick 30. You either run it back or you go into free agency. And the way last year ended, I don't see how anyone could sign up for running it back. Now, if the running back market dries up, ETN stays, Breece Hall stays, Kenneth Walker stays, then you have to pivot and go to plan B. But for right now, if even one of these guys hit free agency, Broncos need to be all over. Other positions, two on the roster on the defensive side. I know a lot of people are talking about Devin Lloyd. Like, that is so far down on the list of priorities if I'm the Denver Broncos. But he would be that type of a move too. You like Dre Greenlaw, but he was banged up. You like Alex Singleton, but you think you may be able to do better. You like the potential of Justin Strnad, but Devin Lloyd's a bona fide year in and year out factor at his position. But to me, there's a priority list, and inside linebacker is not high on the priority list. But that's the theme of this Broncos, the mantra, if you will, that I think the Denver Broncos should have. They were good enough this year. That's not good enough. Now apply that to every position. Is there a way now with more money than they've had under Sean Payton? Are there positions where they can upgrade? And then what order do those positions fall in? I put running back at the very top, followed by pass catcher, whether it's David Njoku at tight end or getting another wide receiver. Your offseason priorities for the Denver Broncos at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, it's been a little bit slow out of the gate for Team USA in terms of notching golds. Business has picked up the last day or two, in large part to some Colorado natives. Get into that coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Day 5 of the Winter Games in Italy have concluded. Better day today for Team USA. This is not necessarily our strongest or stronger of the two Olympics, but things have picked up today. Couple of gold medals, one speed skating, and one in women's moguls. And the woman who won in moguls is, I won't say not a woman, she's a young woman. She's 20-year-old Liz Lemley, and she is from Vail, Colorado. Born in Vail, making her Olympic debut, and she wins gold in the moguls today. And Lemley is, and doing research on her, she's a bit of a wonderkind. She competed in the World Cup when she was 15 years old. So she's somebody that was really good at an early age. And now 5 years later, still at the ripe old age of 20, winning gold medal. And to make it even better, the U.S. took first and second in that event to add to their medal total. And the silver medalist, Jalen Koff, no relation, is from Vail also. So 1-2 in the moguls today, both from Vail, which is also where Lindsey Vonn is from. I forget, is skiing a big deal in Vail? I'm not entirely sure. Yes, it is. I'm just trying to be funny. But that's awesome. So Liz Lemley, Mark Kisla has a great write-up about her in the Gazette. He's in Italy covering these games. So if you're looking for somebody's content to read, Kisla would be a great place to go because he's there and talking to these athletes and experiencing all this. But Liz Lemley getting gold. U.S. picks up 2 gold medals today. They are now second in the gold medal count, a couple behind Norway. By the way, did you see that dude from that Norwegian running up the hill on skis? Do you see this on social media? Absolutely insane that a human being can do that. I was watching him in another event, and I was marveling at what this guy could do. And then he's like just straight running up a hill on skis. Just remarkable. But yeah, so U.S. second in the gold medal count, third in the overall medal count, and a couple of Colorado natives helping out the cause and balancing out what has been a dreadful Olympics, if we're being honest so far, for the more notable Colorado natives in the sport of skiing, which is, of course, Lindsey Vonn suffering the injury on Sunday, and Michaela Schifrin yesterday failing to medal along with her partner and best friend, Breezy Johnson, in the women's combined skiing event. And that's now 7 consecutive Olympic races that Michaela Schifrin has failed to medal in, which is crazy because she's one of our biggest Winter Olympians. In fact, and it's not for nothing, it's not because she's from Colorado that she's one of our biggest Olympians. She holds the record for the most wins in the sport of skiing and holds the records for the most wins on the moguls, the exact event that she was in, albeit a team event or a pairs event. That was her specialty inside of a sport that outside of the Olympics, she dominates. And I was trying to think, like, what would be of the sports that we talk about on a regular basis, what would be the comp to what we're seeing with Michaela Schifrin? I mean, is it like Lamar Jackson? But then I thought, Michaela Schifrin has won medals in the past. It's just that right now she can't. So it's almost like the Russell Wilson thing where he wins early and fails to win later. It's hard to figure why Michaela Schifrin is struggling in the Olympics like she has. But part of this too is, look, she's not struggling all the time. As I alluded to, she's continuing to win during the quote unquote regular season of her sport. It's just that we all tune in at this time. And if people aren't winning, we're like, what's wrong with them? Well, and look, this is, to use the often used comparison, this is their Super Bowl. So yeah, it matters that she's not getting it done right now. But it's not as if Michaela Schifrin struggles outside of the Olympics. And she hasn't even struggled consistently in the Olympics, just consistently lately. And what was wild about that event yesterday is that Breezy Johnson, who had won gold earlier in a different event, was leading after her part of that event. So if Michaela Schifrin finishes 10th instead of, what was it, 15th out of 18th or 13th out of 15th, something like that, if she would have finished just a couple, 10th is not, amazing for a skier as decorated as Michaela Schifrin. If she finishes just a few spots above where she was, they easily medal. Easily. But she was so, just dreadful. She started off well enough and just ran out of steam. So she's got more opportunities. Saturday will be her next event. But the U.S., again, picking up a few medals today, second in the gold medal count, third in the overall medal count. And then there's what's going on with these biathletes. Have you seen this? So we have yesterday a biathlete from the country escapes me, but he goes, as he's being interviewed after medaling, he talks to television and mentions that he cheated on his girlfriend. He uses that moment to, I guess, try to win her back. And I can't believe this hasn't been the plot of a romantic comedy before. Oh, I'm sure there have been romantic comedies where a guy goes on television and says something. I think there has to be that. But he uses his biggest moment. I actually give the guy a lot of credit. It's a bold move. And then did you see the woman, his girlfriend, took to social media and was like, I let him know my feelings on that. Swing and a miss from that biathlete. And then today, I see on social media that one of the biathletes that won today, apparently, committed identity theft with the teammate? Took her credit card information? And now she's in the Olympics and winning medals? What is going I mean, I'm not going to say it makes sense, but biathlon has to be the weirdest sport. Or like the weird I mean, it's like a platypus of a sport. There's shooting, there's skiing, but you put them together? So maybe it attracts a different type of athlete, I suppose. But those are the fun little things that come up during the Olympics too. We have no idea. We've never seen any of these people. And then we know nothing about them, and then we know everything about them. Some of it they don't want us to know. In the case of the male biathlete who was trying to win his girlfriend back, he chooses to volunteer that information. Man, the Olympics. I know the Winter Games are not as popular as the Summer Games, but still fun for the biathletes, if nothing else. Brett, want to get to Brett's text before we go here. Says, good afternoon, Ryan. Good afternoon, Brett. Two things. First, Cortland Sutton may have become more available when he dropped 2 drive-killing passes in the AFC Championship game. And secondly, see if the warden can put some acoustic tile in your prison cell to squelch the echo. I'm in a hotel room. If I was Dan Patrick, I would have the red carpet rolled out for me and would have my own mobile studio and everything. You make do with what you got. As far as your first part, that's kind of what you're saying he's becoming available. I'm saying the fact that he has those drive-killing drops is a sign that maybe the Broncos shouldn't rely on him as much. Keep him for what he does on third down and in the red zone, and then improve the guys around him. So maybe you have a better go-to receiver on every down, or you just have more options than just Cortland Sutton, because when the chips were down and the Broncos needed to make a play, Bo Nix was going Cortland Sutton's direction. Worked out a lot. For Jarrett Stidham, not so much, though. All right, we'll leave it there. I got a bus to a basketball game to catch. I will talk to you at 7:30 tonight for Air Force women's basketball on Extra Sports 1300. This team, hot right now, winners of 3 in a row. Milani Perry now the top scorer in the Mount West. If you haven't followed this team, now would be a good time to get in. 7:30 on Extra Sports 1300. And then the Air Force men's basketball coaches show will be on KVR starting at 6:30. My thanks to Ray Dominguez back in the Extra Sports 1300 studios. Talk to you all tomorrow, hopefully from Colorado.